Mech pilots, online. Battletech manuals, online. Long-term memory, offline. All systems bungled. Initiating BungleTech podcast.
In our 42nd deployment of BungleTech, my spheroid co-host Michael and I are joined by legends of the Inner Sphere, Seth from the Mercenary Star podcast, and Matt the Northman of the Valhalla Club podcast. Together we dive into what it really means to show up authentically with your philosophy, your spirituality, your worldview when you step into the Battletech scene. This one isn't just about mechs, dice, or table etiquette. It's about the deeper stuff, how you bring your whole self to the table, how your beliefs shape the way you play, and how to navigate a community where everyone's carrying their own internal codex. It's a conversation about identity, intention, and the strange magic that happens when giant stompy mechs meet personal philosophy. Wish us luck, MechWarriors. Chance of turbulent battlefields ahead.
Bonus objective. Extraordinary proclamation. Initiating.
Honorable clan members, thank you for joining us once again and tuning in to our monthly announcements and ramblings. These are vital to remaining in touch with the activities of the clan leadership, especially as some of us attempt to draw new controversy to our beloved clan Kodama with each passing day. To that end, I will start by welcoming two talented new members to our ranks. A freshly inducted Bondsperson, Dave G., who has been graciously volunteered to join our new BattleMech collision testing program as a pilot/load testing subject. We have also heard your rumblings, technicians, about the increased workload after the start of the collision testing program, which is why we have hired the esteemed technician Devon. He will be assigned to stand up the new Crumple Zone Uncrumpling team, which we expect will be essential in cost mitigation going forward. Any other clan members interested in participating in the BattleMech collision testing program are advised to speak with one of the Kokons. We firmly believe it to be the key to pushing our clan's combat doctrines to the frontiers of military theory. Selah. This is Professor Michael presenting The Sphere We Live In. One of the most enduring mysteries in BattleMech combat is that of the supposedly unreasonable effectiveness of ground-borne controlled BattleMech direct kinetic impact, or DKI, sometimes termed charging by periphery MechWarriors. Nearly every BattleMech field manual advises strongly against colliding with objects or targets intentionally or unintentionally while at cruising speeds or above. All successor state military strategy guides suggest reprimands for soldiery who use functioning vehicles and mechs as weapons due to the risk to materiel. And physicists who subscribe to a Newtonian or post-Newtonian understanding of the universe state that any damage inflicted during a DKI event would cause a, quote, equal and opposite reaction on the impactor. Despite this, many MechWarriors swear by the technique, and some even go out of their way to find opportunities to make use of it. These DKI freaks will chart long, absurd trajectories, some as long as a kilometer, claiming that it increases their impact damage, despite most BattleMechs reaching their top speed within a 100-meter run. That said, one cannot argue with the results. Take a look at this wrecked Charger, an 80-ton assault mech. As you can see, the impact ablated nearly 3 tons of armor and a number of internal systems. This impact was recorded as coming from a light 25-ton mech traveling at close to 200 kilometers per hour, or 50 meters per second. For comparison, this is a 100-ton Atlas assault mech which came under fire from 2 AC-20 rated Deathgiver 12-centimeter smoothbore autocannons mounted on a king crab, each firing 17-kilogram M339 high-explosive multi-purpose tracer shells at 45 rounds per minute. Each of those shells is loaded with 2.3 kilograms of trinitrotoluene equivalent insensitive explosives. You will note similar amounts of damage caused by the impact of approximately 18 of the 12-centimeter shells, a total of 300 kilograms of projectiles traveling more than 800 meters per second and detonating over 41 kilograms of high explosive against the armor of the Atlas. And if some of the most powerful guns in the sphere can only do as much damage as a charging mech, some would ask why militaries do not simply field cruise missiles with legs. As suggested by one W. Wanderlust, Dr. Honoris Causa of Clan Kodama, lending more credence to this fringe theory of military tactics is the scope of the damage. Look again at this charger, torn open by a mech less than one-third its size. One would expect that the DKI initiator would have been left even worse for wear. Not so. The other mech reportedly walked away from the event with only minor damage. Mech techs have suggested that as the initiator, mech pilots are able to focus impact on load-bearing components, but have no answer for why receiving pilots are not able to do the same. Metamaterial engineers suggest that high magnetic flux from reactor operation at a full run prevents shock buckling of radio endosteel structures. And some physicists suggest that under combat conditions, inter-BattleMech contact should be modeled as perfectly elastic collisions with non-Newtonian force transfer or dilatant shear response, much like an oobleck suspension. Either way, charging remains an infrequent but ever-present tool in a MechWarriors arsenal, and only time will tell whether the military engineers of the future choose to adopt the lessons taught by victims like this charger. Now you know about the sphere we live in.
Primary objective, podcast topic segment, initiating.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 42 of BungleTech, a Battletech podcast. Today is going to be an exciting day and an episode that I must admit is not going to be everybody's cup of tea. I've always been curious about how different beliefs, spiritualities, or religious identities impact how people approach playing Battletech and content creation in Battletech. So if any of this content triggers you today, I want you to know it's completely Nathan's fault. Just blame Nathan. I had to talk Michael into this. Michael's like, I don't want to do this, Nathan. This is crazy, Nathan. Stop smoking the bad stuff, Nathan. But I said, let's push forward. Today, I've gathered some pillars of the Battletech community to join us in this conversation. So I'm just going to say our names, then we'll go into a little bit of a deeper introduction. So we are joined, obviously, first by the sensual Michael. Wait, the secular Michael. There we go.
New adjectives.
Yay. Seth from the Mercenary podcast.
Hey, how's it going?
And Matt the Northman from the Valhalla Club podcast.
Hello, everyone.
So before we get into stuff today, I just want to emphasize it's really not the intention of this episode for anything to become off as pedantic or sanctimonious. When we're talking about personal beliefs and systems and how it inspires you to create and how it inspires you to interact in the table, I'm sure that some people might be rubbed the wrong way. So just please know that as a guiding principle, number one, blame Nathan. Number two, that was not the intent. Thank you, Battletech community. Thank you, listener, for being understanding. So before we start the conversation, which Michael is going to be facilitating, he is the man in charge with the whip today. I want everyone here to just share a little bit about their either spiritual, religious, philosophical perspective that governs their day-to-day life and extends or does not extend to the Battletech community. I'll start to give an example. I consider myself a secular person, but I'm also a devout Buddhist. I've been practicing Buddhism since about 17, and I'm part of the Thich Nhat Hanh Plum Village practice. Let's go to Seth.
Hey, I'm Seth, as mentioned, host of the Mercenary Star podcast. And I was raised in a Christian household, but have had a personal relationship with Christ since I was 8 years old and have been failing upward in my Christian walk ever since.
Well, I guess that's me then. So yeah, Matt the Northman. So I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. A lot of people have the nickname of Mormons. And that's cool. Let's see, I've been officially a member of the church since I was baptized at the age of 8. And it's definitely influenced my life quite a bit. I served a church mission for 2 years in Brazil, and I've been a member pretty much my whole life. Was raised in a family that were all members. And yeah, this is an interesting conversation to have because in my mind, this is Nate filtered by Michael and us answering questions from the two. So it'll be an interesting conversation, and I look forward to it.
Absolutely.
I will say, looking at the questions, they do skew a little bit to the kinds of questions Nathan wants to answer, but I'm sure there's lots of things to discover.
Nathan wants to ask, not answer, Michael.
This is like when a professor asks the class for the test.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I'm Michael. I'm also on this podcast pretty much all the time. I'm here mostly as a mediator, nebulously secular, neutral, unopinionated mediator. So I will share nothing about my personal beliefs, and you will all have to infer them.
Oh, okay. Let's see what he reacts with hostility to. You're an
What questions I give
anti-pizzatarian,
that are
aren't
very
you?
aggressive. Okay, so we'll obviously start from the most relatable side of things, which is, as a content creator, how are you all influenced by your particular beliefs, philosophies, spirituality, etc.? Sort of more specifically, in your own little niche of Battletech creativity, lots of podcasts, but other things as well. Sort of how do you see your spiritual philosophical background influencing that?
I'll jump in. Not that I wrote these questions to be asked, Michael. Thank you very much. I've been thinking about this one, and, it influences it in many ways. My sort of philosophical or spiritual worldview, whatever you want to call it, of Buddhism, it really, it frames how I view everything. And so I think from a podcast perspective, it really has hammered in the concept of me wanting to, one, deliver content that I think is a service to the community that isn't inherently self-serving, and also really frame things in positive ways. It's okay. I don't mind criticism and stuff like that. Criticism, I'm totally down for it. But I feel like being positive spreads positivity. And that is, the key to joy, psychological safety, peace. So that really helps frame not only the topics I'm doing, but how I interact with other guests and how I interact with people in the community. For example, the Global Campaign Initiative. That, to me, other than being this theoretical cool concept, to me, I'm this is of service. This is of service to the community. I know lots of people really related to that, I think, in our creator community as well, for different reasons. So that's one thing that comes to mind.
Yeah, I'll kind of riff off of what Nate said, that this topic of joy. So there's a scripture that we have in the LDS Church that says, "Men are that they might have joy." So it's kind of like a purpose of life is to have this joy. It's not just to come here and, as we believe, is not just to sit here and suffer or kind of just have negative experiences, but to actually have true joy. And I think, in my mind, this is a hobby, and hobbies are to kind of develop this good joy feeling, not with just ourselves, but with others. So that kind of tailors the creative process for me, as I try and make it positive. Like Nathan said, I try to make it so that it helps to develop relationships, positive relationships between different people. So Battletech specifically, I try to emphasize the positive stories in Battletech, or things that kind of bring people together. Maybe there's things that people share that they, they're like, "Oh, you like that too," type of thing. versus like we could always, all of us content creators could just focus 24/7 on the negative aspects of products that CGL puts out, right? Oh, this is incredibly bad or whatnot. But I think when I look at myself, I tend to try and focus on the positive things that are out there and try and bring people together in kind of joy with those things. So I think that's kind of how my own personal belief and things kind of goes into that creative process.
Anything to add, Seth?
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, like how it affects how I shape or approach content creation, not trying to cover it all with the same, with like kind of the same answer, but, part of it is that I really do hope to spread that kind of like positive influence that the love of Christ has given to me. Through that, it's about relationships though as well. So with my podcast, I have a different guest on every episode because part of it is that I love to build relationships. I love to get to meet people. I love to play, but I probably talk and get to know people way more than I ever play Battletech. And more than I make content, if I'm being honest. But yeah, but with that, it affects the way I present content through the lens of bringing something positive to the community, but then also just in how I'm interacting with everybody, how, whether it's guests, fans, other content creators, critics, even, like I'm going to approach each of them the same, and I'm going to be respectful. I'm going to be kind. And I'm going to try to treat them respectful as a fellow human being. So, and we're not at all competing with each other, in the content creator space. So
only good vibes here.
That's right.
Nathan.
Just something that came to mind. I actually never told you this, Seth, because I think at the end of your content, lots of times you say, like, God bless, right? I think you end of your, yeah. And actually, that was one of my inspirations, like chief inspirations for doing this episode. Because that's an example of like first, you're obviously none of us here are pushy about our religious ideology. We're not like talking about that in the podcast, but that was a clear statement. And that to me, ending your episodes with that frames what the episode's about and like how this is about like giving. So I don't know. To me, that was, like I say, one of the chief inspirations for doing this episode. And that's why I reached out to you. I'm like, hey, Seth, let's do this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate that being an influence. So.
Yeah, and I really liked what Seth said about kind of bringing people together. And in my belief system, like God created us kind of different. All of us are different, and it's a good thing. And bringing people together that are different. So I'm also a scientist, so I kind of live in an interesting world. And I deal a lot with ecology, and ecology is kind of a combination of different things that come together. And like the ecology of gamers is pretty interesting, especially gamers that are content creators. And none of us that are on here do our content alone. And I think that's really good because none of us, well, in general, a lot of us, play with other people as well. We play the game or experience Battletech with other people as well. So I think this interesting thought of, we find value in other people's thoughts or sometimes actions. I look at my own kids, I'm like, sometimes the actions I don't find very good, but different people and interactions between them is something that we're losing in a lot of cultures and societies. And I find the value in other people very high. And I think that translates into the content, but also kind of the experience that I have with Battletech.
I'll make a small observation here, very riskily, very carefully, cautiously. So you all sort of riffed on the same theme here of like service and wanting to do good things for the community, wanting to be positive and stuff. But I note there might be a subtle difference in here where Nathan, you talking about from your Buddhist perspective, you're very like self-focused. You want to personally do good in the world. You want to make sure that you're acting selflessly. You want to make sure that you're helping others. Seth, Matt, both of your answers seem a little bit more like, I don't know, like community minded and like others and your relationships with people and with groups. I'm not sure if I may be reading into it too much there.
Sounds pretty good to me.
Nathan?
Well, are you calling me selfish, Michael?
No, that is exactly the opposite of what I am saying.
That's what it sounds like. But
I'm just saying that your I perhaps your sort of Buddhist background leads you to be a bit more focused on like your inner life, what you can do, how you can, contribute and serve, less so than like, helping build the relationships and
yeah,
I don't know. I'm just going to peter off here before I say anything.
It's interesting. I mean, 100%, like the practice, my Buddhist practice is self-motivated. It's like all internal work, because they really believe that it's like this sort of the principle of interconnection, that if you want to make the world better, you start by making yourself better. And better is like, in quotes, better. What does better mean? That's where it becomes complicated. But definitely it's like, it is the guiding principle of my practice is like internal, where I don't have like an external source necessarily. So maybe there's a little distinction there. But yeah, no, I would 100% say like it starts from the self. Like I'm like, how can I contribute? What does the community need that I can do? Nathan, you're so great.
Just before the next question, I'm a little bit curious, and you don't have to answer this, Seth, because Matt, you mentioned that you've done some mission work in the past. Seth, have you ever done mission work?
Yes and no. So yes, in one sense of I have served the church. I've served it officially on staff. I have served it as volunteer staff, like a internship kind of thing during college. And then I've just served as a volunteer. I actually have served in student ministry as one of those three for over 20 years. And I'm doing it even now. Like I went to camp with my kids a week ago. It was great. Didn't get that much sleep. And, beds and facilities were not great, but it was a great week. But yeah, so I've done that. And then I've also done what some might consider, not necessarily what Matt, I know of Matt's mission, what he's talking about as far as what that means for him. But for myself, I've done some missional work here online. Before I was doing Battletech content, I was actually doing streaming and gaming content for some church online stuff that kind of carried over and was kind of like really helpful during that horrible, year-ish of 2020 when everyone was stuck at home. And so I was doing a lot of stuff there, even with students at that time related to gaming and the church as well.
I was going to ask whether there were, some parts of like your personal practice that, seep into a creative work, as Nathan put it in the question. But in this case, it's not so much a seeping into as like it was your current content creation almost directly flowed from that.
It did. Yeah. A friend and I started a channel on Twitch years ago, almost a decade ago at this point, where we were literally just putting some of the church services online because we didn't feel like there was that many services that were being put on there. We actually put it on Twitch because we saw a lack of it there. And while Twitch is a great platform, it can be very negative. Like if you go to any Reddit thread, it can be very negative. So we were trying to bring that to Twitch. And I think that it was very good for the time, but then we both have moved on since then. And like I said, kind of grew into me getting back into Battletech and joining WolfNet during, kind of the 2020 when everyone was stuck at home and we were all playing MegaMech, with each other because we couldn't go to the stores. And then just kind of led into wanting to be, serve and help with WolfNet and that community, and kind of grew from there from, graphics and stuff for their content, and then started making content for myself. So,
Matt, anything to add on your side?
I was just about to suggest that actually, you mentioned a mission. For me, I grew up as kind of a shy kid, although most people are like, they don't believe that at all. But so kind of this mission that I went on for 2 years, it was basically a lot of like talking to people that I'd never seen before. And it really drew me out. And that drawing out has allowed me to it makes it way easier for me to talk to people about Battletech and stuff. And so like, it's directly translated into me kind of reaching out to people in a Battletech version as well. And so that's really how I got into the content creation kind of world. Is I was just really active in the community in Colorado, because it really wasn't like, I'm not inhibited at all to like be talking to a person and be like, hey, come play this game. This is cool. And I don't feel any internal compunction about it. Like there's nothing like that. And so it's, I guess the experiences, the religious experiences that I have had in the past have directly translated into my ability to kind of do that in the BattleTech sphere as well. So I just thought I'd mention that. It's kind of a great question there from Michael.
Yeah, it's easy to build relationships and talk to people that you don't know when you've done that a lot.
Nathan, do you have anything? Is this completely different to your experience as a Buddhist, which did not in any way prepare you to be talking to people?
I've never had a problem talking to people. That's that perhaps is one of my problems, talking too much.
I was about to say Nate was born ready, right?
Sort of the flip side then, flipping it around, is there any content that you've ever been working on that you've noticed you've either been consciously or unconsciously filtering out or reframing or sort of adjusting how you talk about it or share it because of your beliefs or values?
I was just going to say, like, I think for me personally, I try to watch my language and try to keep my content family friendly, as the saying goes. As far as me also having a whole lot of different guests on, I don't necessarily expect that of everyone who comes on the podcast with me. I'm not going to force that on them. Most people are pretty, respectful and like, oh yeah, I'll do what I can, kind of thing. And again, I have no problems with anyone who comes in and wants to use more colorful words than I would. But it's something that, I definitely strive for, is to make it, any words or actions that I'm putting out are going to reflect my belief and my Christian values. So, and then kind of like what Nate said, I did not actually plan it, but my sign off of good night and God bless just kind of happened. And I was like, I like that. I'm just going to use that. So, because it is a reflection that, I wish that upon everybody, who's listening. I want them to end on a good note and, hope God can bless them in some way.
Nathan?
Mine is sort of a silly reason, but it's like my perspective to GMing, or my perspective to, when we're creating the global campaign, or when I'm playing a campaign. And Michael will know this. I genuinely like to suffer, and I think suffering is a positive thing. And that is actually a principle of Buddhism. This is base teaching called all life is suffering, which sounds really negative, but it's actually positive if you get into a little bit. And so I don't find suffering to be a negative thing. And so I find that, I'm more willing, like with the global campaign, I was more willing to have players suffer, and then I'll be like, all right, we'll adjust later. They can have a bad game here, but then we'll try to adjust later. Then the rest of the group were like, Nathan, you might give people a bad time. And I was like, bad times are okay. Builds character, sort of thing. and I'm sorry. I guess we'll just leave it at that. I'm sorry. But that's something that sneaks into my own games and everything like that.
Matt, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think it's funny that you brought that up, Nathan, because every time I bring up, like, let's play in the clan invasion, clans versus inner sphere, that's what everyone's like, well, I don't want to do that because it's very, one side is going to suffer quite a bit versus the other. It just made me laugh quite a bit. I think there's definitely some, when I think about doing, especially creating content like scenarios or whatnot, I tend to avoid things that I guess I don't fully support. Like, I'm not, let's play in the red light district type thing, and I don't use profanity and things like that. On our podcast, the podcast that I'm on, it was me and 4 other military dudes. So it's like, well, I'll be the lone dude that's not using profanity, and that, I love the guys. And so that's just what it is. But there's definitely things that I shy away from. So I probably don't speak very much out against things. but there are things that I wouldn't include in stuff that I create. So yeah, like I think Nate mentioned, I'm not like proselytizing on any of the content creation that I do, but there's definitely some things that I pull back on. And I'm always thinking it's actually a lot about my kids. So I've got 2 boys, and I'm always thinking like, is this a scenario that I want them to play, that they would feel comfortable playing? And if not, I'll probably pull things back a little bit. So that's probably my thought is I probably just tailor it for my own kids, and then everyone else hopefully has fun. And I think it keeps it in the area where almost everyone can have fun, and then I'm not like just this segment of the community has fun and everyone else either disregards or doesn't like it. That's probably where I lie.
Yeah, that's a really neat framing of it, as it's not so much about like avoiding certain things that you don't like these things, but you're not avoiding them necessarily for your sake as much as like, you don't want to include as many people who may not want to play with certain things, who may not want to deal with certain subjects.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I would add to that because I definitely agree with Matt that like I am thinking of my own kids often when I'm creating content, which is why I will try to go for that family friendly tag. At the same time, and again, I'm not gonna, like you said, I'm not gonna be probably going into detail of those Battletech, lore scenes that are maybe a little more explicit or infer such. But at the same time, I'm also not necessarily filtering out the stories themselves. I'm not necessarily gonna to shy away from it because at the end of the day, the Mercenary Star podcast is more lore focused, and Battletech at its heart is a human story. It's humanity in the far future. And so flaws and conflicts and all get included, just maybe with a more family friendly tag.
Yeah, I think that like for me, the creation, like there's certain topics that I'm not against like visiting topics that do not align to my morality. But if I do so, or even topics that do align with my morality, I really try to be mindful and sensitive to the diverse reactions that my audience might have. Like, I ask myself when we're creating stuff or games or whatever, if this person is giving me the benefit of the doubt, do they have a reason to become hostile or hurt by this? And if the answer is yes, then I think that I should adjust my behavior. Because if you're not giving someone the benefit of the doubt and you're coming in there, you're going to find problems and you're going to be hypercritical. And I think the problem then becomes more internal to you. But if someone's giving you the benefit of the doubt and you still manage to hurt them or offend them or make them angry, to me, that is like a moment of self-reflection where it's like, that shouldn't have been the case. So how can I reflect and how can I adapt what I'm delivering in a way that is more accessible and more positive, right?
Maybe sort of, keying off of that about like, we talk fairly frequently about sort of how wide the Battletech universe is. And, it's part of what like makes it a really fun universe to play in is it is like huge in scope and has a little bit of everything and has that really like, gritty sort of realistic feeling. Is there anything in the universe that like you just generally try to steer clear of, doesn't, it makes it hard for you to engage with, Matt?
Yeah, when I hear talk of cat ladies, I'm like I'm out the door, right?
I was gonna say Canopus, Space Vegas,
So that, yeah, that's like there's those particular, and for some people like that's their jam, and like you're saying, BattleTech has a little bit of everything, and I think it's cool. I almost think of it a little bit like kind of the con scene, and what we do with these larger events is we bring all these different groups in, and they're playing different games, but they're all in the same room. And to me, like having people in the same room, even if they have very different viewpoints or things that they're really interested in, is very important. So I even though I'm not a cat lady guy, some people are, but I am a BattleTech guy, and those cat lady people can still be BattleTech people. So that's where I think is like there's some commonality. Everyone has their own likes, dislikes. So that's definitely like that's one of my little pet peeves about BattleTech lore. But I think everyone has that with some little thing of BattleTech. So with other people it may be Urbies or something, but yeah, so that's the one that pops out to me. But I still think it's so great to have this like kind of big tent view of BattleTech where we can still include everyone, even where people have certain things that they gravitate towards more.
Yeah, I think that mine is little things, but like, for example, one thing that people in Battletech community will always talk about, oh, let's go commit some war crimes and genocide. Ha 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 ha. I'm like, I know this is a joke. And it's what's so funny about the global campaign is like when we're looking at the results, right? You see how inherently good people try to be. No, we'll protect the civilians. No, we'll do, no. But then the jokes are like all so dark. It's really interesting to me. But I'm not going to be the type of player that comes to the table. I'm like, yeah, let's do some genocide. Like to me, it's not even interesting. It's not something I want to relish or even joke about. And once again, these people are 100%, I know they're joking, but I just don't even want those words to come out of my mouth. It just feels a little bit wrong to me.
Yeah, I can relate to that.
So far, like outside of your moral sphere, that it's like, I don't know, it's kind of weird to even like role play about.
Well, like Nate said earlier, I too do a lot of GMing for TTRPGs, and I'm not gonna like help guide a table down into some of those darker paths. But in the few times where I've been a player and someone has done something like that, I would be, probably the person at least that would try to convince the party otherwise. So, I don't think that I would, because at the end of the day too, like Nate said, I know they're joking or I know they're just being involved in the entertainment aspect of it. I'm not going to like quit the table from it, but I'm not going to necessarily participate.
And sort of, maybe relating to that is, how much does that tie into like authenticity? Nathan's big on authenticity and like, part of being authentic is bringing those views with you to the table, to the people you're playing with. This is part of your relationships with the people around you, and that comes with you, intentional or not. So, are there any sort of like things that you in particular like to bring to the table? Anything that you consistently bring when you're playing?
My answer is super quick again. It's suffering. I like my characters to. I do not like. Well, I mean, it's fun to have powerful characters, and I like to feel strong, but I like to struggle. And I like to bring characters that have lots of like internal conflict, internal dialogue, tangible weaknesses. Perhaps it's greed, perhaps it's lust, perhaps it's something, but there's a tangible weakness that they are struggling with. And if that's in a GM situation, or if it's even like when I'm even just a random skirmish, I'll be like, okay, this guy, he struggles with ego. This guy thinks he's the best mech warrior on the field and he's never going to back down. And he's just been lucky so far. Or this person is struggling with bravery. They're terrified all the time. So I will actively apply that in my games, that even if they aren't role-playing based, and frustrate my fellow player if it's a team game. Nathan, why are you doing that?
Is that considered like a good Buddhist practice to frustrate others and make them suffer as much as you can? I'm not maybe up to date on my Plum Village philosophies, but
it starts inside, Michael. I can only be my best self, and if my best self enrages them, get the hell no.
Nathan, the dark Buddhist.
There has to be a balance, of course, a give and take.
Yeah, I would. When Nate uses the word authentic, sometimes I my first reaction was actually I try to be a little bit unauthentic when I come to the gaming table because I'm actually quite a competitive person in so much that it doesn't make for a positive experience for whomever I'm playing. And so that I definitely toned down, and it's internally frustrating sometimes because it tends to end up with me losing quite a few games or whatnot. That's hard for me to take, but it actually, it is in a way suffering for a reason because actually it has improved my parenthood. This ability to kind of deal with a negative experience to try and turn it positive while still dealing with kind of the internal angst. Over time, that internal angst has been reduced and reduced just by practice. And kind of that practice of patience with kids is a pretty good thing. So it's actually like kind of overall playing Battletech, but playing it in only a semi-competitive way where I am internally dialing down the competition. And I think the phrase I've used a lot of times is when you get to the point where you're playing with the player across the table instead of against the player across the table, that's where I find that kind of that good, joyful interaction versus this like, I'm against you, you are the one, I must destroy type thing.
Seth, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, like as far as what my faith kind of brings to the table, I think the biggest part for me is just building relationships. Like Matt said, playing with the person as opposed to against the person, getting to know the person you're playing. That's something that if I'm getting to know them, or if I do know them and I'm working on my relationship with them as a person, then I'm less likely to get irritated. I'm less likely to, do something that is maybe less sensitive to them. And in the same way that if I'm working on my own, personal relationship with God, that I'm able to do that a lot easier.
And is that ever something that you like consciously try to keep in mind at the table? Like, if there's like something crazy happens or someone's being really difficult, is there ever a time that like you consciously draw on that, or is it more just sort of?
Yeah, I mean, I think at this point in my life, being in my mid 40s, it's pretty much any interaction with people that I have to draw on that, because whether it's at the table or at work, conflict's going to be there, friction over a topic might be there. And so, yeah, I think it's something that I definitely, lean on, being able to take a minute, think about it, and then, be able to work through it. So,
Nathan, is there anything that you do to keep grounded when you inevitably finally cut through the harsh exterior of an individual, the stoicism of them, and finally your suffering gets to them and you can see their torn emotions finally exposed for you to see? Perhaps they start weeping openly at the table from having to play with you. Is there anything that you do to help keep yourself grounded or help keep them grounded in a difficult situation, such as playing with or against you?
Is this a personal experience, Michael? This sounds really specific.
Well, first, I schedule a podcast recording session with other spiritual thinkers, and then I bring the victim and I ask them to be the host so they can work through their...
I feel like I haven't been your victim at Battletech. By the time we were playing Battletech, I've just watched you do it to other people, but I will admit there's perhaps a little bit of drawing on this from the times when we played fighting games together, because if you thought that Battletech could foment bad feelings between people, fighting games, that is another tier.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, fighting games really gave me my grit and my ability to handle loss when I started getting competitive into fighting games. Like, your ego is just ground to dust over time.
So anyways, when your two urban mechs armed with Arrow 4 launchers burst from cover and a couple of your opponents say, "What the heck? Why did you do that? I thought this was a friendly game. That's extremely uncool, Nathan." They're like three tables away. Literally, how could we possibly fight that? Also, you probably broke the rules. And, things are getting a little bit heated.
I did not break the rules.
And things are getting a little bit heated. How do you stay grounded and present in that moment?
Boy, so that's a true story. That was a lesson learned for me. that is considered scummy and bad game manners. And so I was like, okay, I'm sorry that this has sort of ruined this experience for you. How can we still play this game but balance this out? And in that exact situation, we rolled it back, right? We're like, okay, let's roll it back a turn. That Arrow 4 strike didn't come out and blow you up. You know about them already. We'll just forget that happened and we'll still play it out to see how far we can go. And that was like the solution. But I think in a non-specific situation, like I'm okay breaking rules for the other player. Like it happens all the time. You headshot someone in the first 3 rounds or something like that. You're like, oh, let's just re-roll that. Let's edge it. Let's not worry about it. Like you really have to react with who you're playing with. And then obviously there will be people that you play with that you can't serve them regardless of what you do. They'll be unhappy. But there are people that, have justifiable reasons. Like I think like that Arrow 4 example is great because if you go on Reddit, you talk to anybody about that in the Battletech community that's our experience, they will say that is super scummy. And like, Nathan, that was so scummy what you did. But I didn't know it was scummy. That's like in a fighting game, just pressing light punch again and again, and cheaping someone out. And like, if you don't know that's considered scummy, you need to learn. So I don't know if I have an answer for you.
The important thing is Nathan didn't do anything wrong, and he brought suffering to other people. And
yeah, that is the important thing, Michael. Thanks for summarizing that. What a lesson that was.
I realize we've gotten a little bit askew here, but anything else for you of like staying grounded? You mentioned practice both for your kids and from your kids in dealing with BattleTech players, similar groups, really.
Yeah, I think when I take a step back, and it's usually not, I'm not the best at doing this in the moment, but it's usually the night of when something happens. And I've gotten to an age where I do believe that all of us down here are all children of God and we all have worth. Even that person that was like, I had one experience at Adepticon one year, there was a kid just like screaming in my ear because he didn't like something that I did on the Battletech table. And I was like, whoa, I'm not happy with this guy. Pretty ticked off.
This is extremely challenging.
Yeah, it was extremely challenging. And so I didn't deal with it the best way. I just continued to do exactly what he was mad about, even more. I don't know if you guys have all watched The Office, but there's this part where Michael is dating Pam's mother and he's like, I'm going to date her harder, so that was my initial response. And that looking at it afterwards, I knew that was not a good response. But there have been other times, plenty of times where it comes down to that my belief should be mirrored by my actions. And as I've gotten older, I'm able to control my actions, I think, a lot better. And sometimes it just comes down to kind of reframing, I guess is a good word for it. Yes, this is a hard situation, but you can still do all these things and still have a good time. Perhaps a double Arrow 4 is unavoidable, that this might create a negative situation. But even, Nathan took it with good grace and he stepped it back. They did something else so that at least there's an opportunity to have a good, enjoyable time and keep that relationship good instead of just saying, no, we're going to go with it. They're here, screw you type thing. So I think kind of being flexible is something that's really important, especially with, this type of thing. I think that's a lot of kind of the negative experience that I've heard from people with games like Warhammer or something where there's this inflexibility with a lot of players, and that leads to some really negative experiences. And then people are always wondering like, what did I spend $1,000 on? So I always try and keep it so that whatever you put into Battletech, let's just make that a positive thing. If it takes me just taking a couple deep breaths, which is sometimes all it takes, and realizing this is just a hobby. Like, in reality, no one's life is on the line here. So let's just try and make it as positive as possible and trying to deal like the best that we can with where we're at. I think I heard that Teddy Roosevelt said, you do the best you can with what you have where you're at. And I really like that as far as being flexible with other players, because human interactions are interesting and not always the easiest. So anyways, just I guess just kind of that belief mirroring through my actions, I think is what I try to do.
Seth, anything else to add?
I think he kind of said this, but just being able to give grace at the table to the other person, remembering that they're human, they are coming from a completely different situation that you're in. They could be dealing with a lot in their personal lives, and you don't know. Kind of being able to give them grace in whatever that difficult situation is, and be like, you know what, that's fine. We can, kind of like what Nate said, we can roll it back. We can start over. We can go back to where it was fun and try to keep having fun. Because at the end of the day, like Matt said, it's a hobby. So we're here to have fun, not to suffer. Nate.
But that is what's fun. It's an inherent contradiction. God.
Yeah, it just made me remember we had an experience a couple years back where we were doing kind of a bigger event in the Colorado community. And so there's like 30 people in a room. We're doing, we're not playing with super advanced rules, okay, Nate? But we were doing something that was a little bit difficult for beginners. So there was like some calculations involved and whatnot. But one player had a panic attack right there and just kind of flipped out. And that, that's exactly what we did. We just kind of took him aside, let him kind of calm down and say, well, let's, forget that complicated stuff. Just keep playing what you know how to play. Play the basic Alpha Strike. You play how you play. Others will play how they play. And then he was able to just calm down, took a minute, and it did take a little bit of time, but overall, at the end of the day, he still walked away with, a couple minis and a good experience. Even though in the intermediate, it was a really tough time. And like, some people were like, whoa, 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 because he was like yelling and screaming and all this stuff. But yeah, he's another person and can't just disregard him or whatnot. So we took some time, calmed him down, get everything. So it turned what could have been a negative into a positive. So that was an experience that I thought of while Seth was talking there.
That's powerful.
Do you have anything so powerful to share, Nathan?
No.
Did you ever help anyone with a panic attack?
I don't think so.
Do you think you're net positive on panic attacks brought into the world?
Yeah, stop asking me the big questions, man.
Net positive on panic attacks.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that, maybe I'm net, let's call me net even for panic attacks. I think that, I try to be a calming presence at the table, not in terms of the energy level I bring a high energy level, but I attempt to be very mindful to the people I'm playing with and sort of responsive towards them in a way that doesn't have me just in my high energy level just stomping all over them, because I feel like that is a big threat that I can honestly 100% understand someone having a panic attack when you're in a group setting. All of a sudden you're playing a game. There's pressure for time. I got to move and I don't understand these rules. Like, I can totally understand and relate to that experience of someone being in that situation. So I guess all I can do is take away from that story a lesson of compassion for myself in the future, that I should be perhaps more mindful. Because was I the one causing their panic attack? Was I there, man?
I was just about to say that having played in an event that you put on at KSAG, what you are saying is exactly what you do. Like, you took a large group setting. I mean, there's a lot of us with minis on the board, and all you did was make your side, or the units that you and Michael were using, super easy for the rest of us. Like, you not dumbed it down, but you made the experience like you met us where we were, where the players were, and you made it really simple for us to have a really good time. So you kind of took on that extra suffering, one may say, so that the rest of us did not have to suffer. Like, you weren't you two were moving like, I don't know, 25 units in 2 minutes in classic BattleTech. So it was like you're doing it so the players can have this positive experience. So I thought it was a really awesome time. And what you said is really what you've done. So I was gonna, props to you.
Thank you. I did it, Michael. I did it.
You're not used to having a positive influence on the podcast.
Yes.
You're just used to relentless criticism from me.
Actually, we did that, Michael. We did it. That was a team effort. So sorry.
Okay. Anything else on sort of the showing up at the just before we wrap up here? Anything that you want to share about yourself or your views or anything?
One random thing I do this has been really good for me is this is just what I need. I meditate literally before like Ogre's Den is our game. I'll drive there and I'm like, okay, we're going to have a competitive game. I sit down and I meditate in the car for like 10 minutes before I go in because I know, like, to Matt's story of like the person screaming at him, like, I'm going to do it more. Like, that to me is such a human and natural instinct for me. And like, if I'm going to game that like a competitive environment, because we have a pretty competitive group here in Classic, and I'm going to that setting, I do feel I come with an anxiety. And that anxiety, I unintentionally pass that energy and that feeling to other players. So my focus is to be in a completely neutral, positive space so that when I come in, I can like see everything and truly engage with people at the level where they are. So, and I can't do that without meditation. I need it. Even if it's 5 minutes, breath work, I'm good to go. But without that, I even did it at KSEG, remember, before like our events, I'd like meditate in the room and I come down, or else I'm going to make you
don't want to see him when he doesn't meditate.
Yeah. I'm crazy.
Pretty nasty.
I would define myself that way if I don't meditate. I'm like a flawed person that without that meditation, man, I'm a monster.
I find a similar. I mean, I typically tend to pray in the mornings, and before a big event, I'm always praying that morning. Not that I'll win, but that I'll at least have a good time, and that tends to keep me on the right kind of. That just the starting the day with that focus tends to keep me in bounds. I don't know.
Sets the right expectations for the day.
Exactly. It's like, I'm not praying to win because I know that prayer won't be answered. But I am praying to be able to control myself, which is who I really can control. And that definitely keeps, similar to meditation, is that kind of that self-control that allows your response to whatever circumstance you're in. Because maybe the dice, or at least hopefully the dice are they're not set. So I can respond to bad dice rolls or whatnot with a positive experience, with a positive spirit.
I was just gonna kind of agree. Similarly, like if I'm getting my consistent, daily prayer and Bible reading, then I'm going to be a lot more likely to be able to handle those situations and keep my Christian values close at hand to deal with it, whatever situation is going to come. And bring empathy and encouragement to the table. So yeah, like we said, everyone's there to have fun. We don't know what we're dealing with on the other side of the table. Could be having a really bad day, or it could just be Tuesday. Don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, quick lightning round. Everyone on a scale of 1, the easiest, simplest experience of your life, 10, the most personally challenging to your values as a person and your ability to stay composed and be the person you want to be. 1 to 10, where does Battletech, a game of Battletech, sit? Nathan?
That's hard. That's all about who I'm playing with. So if I'm playing a game one-on-one.
Worst. Absolute worst possible opponent. Worst possible game mode, playing with mechs that you hate, and also there is a child screaming in your ear the entire time.
I mean, you should feel right at home suffering like that, Nate.
Yeah, fun. It's no. I'd say it's probably like in terms of me being triggered and me being able to manage that situation. I'd say probably a 6 or 7, 6.5. Yeah.
Okay. Matt?
Yeah, I would say that 10 years ago, that'd be an 8, 8.5, but it's definitely like a 6 to maybe even a 5, except you can't use 5 because that's cheating when you do a 1 to 10. So yeah, I'll go with the 6.
Is that because you have children and so where 10 has like just moved even further?
Well, I think, yeah, children definitely helps with the whole patience angle, but definitely kind of, I think, my beliefs do have...
It's more personal development thing. It's not that you've discovered new depths of frustration that you didn't think were possible before.
No, it is definitely a personal, internal development type thing. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, well, since I can't use 5, and I don't want to give the same answer as Matt, no. Honestly, with the experiences in my life and through my faith, I feel like I can honestly say that I can handle it at like a 4. Like that's, I have been in enough situations in my life, not just with kids, although kids definitely test your patience, and not even just your kids. Like I said, I've served in student ministry. That's 6th graders through 12th graders for 20 plus years. And when you've got 40 kids testing your patience, it can be a lot as well. But no, my wife definitely has called me a peacemaker before. That I'm the person who tries to stay calm and help people work through conflict. So,
have you ever put those skills to use at a BattleTech table, like in universe?
Well, not in universe, but at a BattleTech table, yeah, for sure. With some of my closest friends, even, because those are the ones that you really get mad at, right? When you have somebody who does something that is, scummy or shady, right? Or whatever, But yeah, I've definitely had that where it's like, all right, we need to calm down. Let's all walk away for 5 minutes and come back, and we can resume. We got to remember this is a game. So I definitely try to be the voice of reason in a lot of that.
One last question around. If you could give one piece of advice for showing up authentically, what would it be? Nathan.
Mine is simply just don't rush. Don't rush. Don't rush towards the game. Don't rush your turns. Take your own pace and take your own pace in an unapologetic manner. People might try to rush you. But that's sort of, I think, their anxiety and stress. And if you, I think, embrace that, you're just going to experience the same thing that they're currently experiencing. So, obviously, be on time in your games. Be respectful. But really find a pace that's comfortable for you and play to it. And if you're in a situation with a group where you feel like I can't do that, and like because over a game, even if you have someone that's like really like, come on man, you're taking so long, blah blah blah. Over a game, if I think you have that presence, that person will generally change. But if you keep on playing in like one game all the way through, second game, the exact same thing, you're not there to change that person and you're not having a good time. So it's time to find a different group to play with where you can play the way that you want to play in the time you want to play where you were stress free.
Yeah, I think coming to the table with a smile is actually like the easiest way to start everything on a positive note. Like it's not for every culture, but generally for us North Americans, coming with a smile and then communicating clearly is really important, because if you can't communicate the positivity that you want to have, that you want to generate, then things could become muddled, right? Like if Nathan brings some advanced rule and he doesn't communicate it clearly, then there's confusion. Like Nathan's thinking, why can't you guys do this? And they're thinking, what are you telling us to do? And there's satellites in the sky and PPCs flying everywhere, right? So communication is really key. But I think overall, I just try and approach it with a smile on my face. And that is like a miracle. Like people light up a little bit. Not everyone, but most people do.
That is super powerful too. Like you're 100% right. Agreed.
Yeah, smiling's great. Yeah, I think for me, in the Bible, we're told to love your neighbor as yourself. And so bringing that to the table, like as advice, if we can respect and treat people better than we would want to be treated, I think we're all pretty capable of that. And it's gonna give a better experience for everyone coming to the table. And it makes it a lot easier. So unless you're Nathan and you're wanting everyone to suffer. So
Or unless your opponent is Nathan or your teammate is Nathan.
He wants to suffer too, so he's in the same boat. But I will say, we've been making fun of Nathan and his suffering kick, but I will say that in the Battletech world specifically, if there's no like repercussions for things, then it becomes like less meaningful, because that's not how life is, right? Like Seth said, Battletech is a human story, and the human history does have a lot of suffering. There's a lot of suffering around, and I probably don't do it too intentionally, but I definitely want to show, something realistic, because it makes it more meaningful. And the reason that is important to me is because if it's not like this kind of semi-realistic thing, then that relationship I'm trying to get with the player across the board or the group that I'm playing with, at some point it breaks down a lot easier without some realism to it. I think that's where it comes in. So suffering is okay, Nathan.
yeah.
It doesn't bear quite so much to the like power fantasy. You're obviously metal clad knights on the battlefield, and there is a certain element of power fantasy anytime you're in a 80-ton battle robot, but at the same time it is a world that's kind of grounded, and bad things happen. A lot of bad things happen, and you're just
gritty and dirty, and things break down. Yeah, no, it's like we were saying, Battletech's human story, and none of us are perfect.
We saw that during the global campaign initiative when is this like it is fundamentally the overarching story was like bad things happening and getting worse, and you pretty much know how it's going to go, but most of the players still showed up and tried to be a team that made things a little bit less bad. So that's kind of cool. It's a fun bonding experience with your fellow players.
A shared grief and shared experiences is always been one of those things that creates human bonds, right? Mostly strong bonds, but sometimes they can kind of destroy things. But I think it's interesting to see kind of that similarity between Battletech and IRL in real life. So yeah, it's super interesting for those similarities to pop out for a lot of people. I think for a lot of people, that's what drives their interest in Battletech versus other maybe gaming or lore systems.
Yeah. All right. Well, unless anyone else has something to add, we'll wrap up here. I don't think we said anything too controversial except for that one part, Nathan. Make sure you cut that one out.
One thing I do want to say, I'm really curious from our listeners too. So if you want to send us, comments in the episode, or you want to send us an email to bungletech@outlook.com regarding your own practices. And once again, these can be spiritual, religious, philosophical, secular. I don't really care. It's about, you having mechanisms to bring a practice of yours, despite our beliefs here are, quite different. We have quite different, like if you call, even though I say I'm a secular Buddhist, to me, it's the line between religion, spirituality is very blurred. So we've three sort of distinct religious views here, but so many aligning principles and I think points of agreement. And I feel like it would be the exact same with someone who, was completely secular, that didn't have a Buddhist philosophy, that just, just a normal dude. But I love to...
normal.
No, sorry. That's the controversial thing. Oh, Nathan, you shouldn't have said normal. Just a standard, just an average person. I think that, yeah, I want to see
an average, non-exceptional, not weird person, who believes normal things.
I said what I want to say. I'm not going to go. I'm going to keep on digging the hole, and I can't edit this out. The truth must be told.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, Seth, Matt. It was great chatting with you.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
On to the next segment.
This is Professor Michael with Your Sphere Today. The armed forces of the Federated Suns drew fire from members of the High Council this week after several long-standing BattleMech procurement contracts dating back to the 3130s were brought before the Council. The AFFS has released a statement that all procurement contracts are reviewed on an annual basis to ensure our brave soldiery are properly equipped to secure the freedom of all citizens of the Federation without unduly burdening the tax-paying world and civilian supporters. Critics say, however, that this is another example of defense budget being spent on overpriced equipment for the gentry and members of the House. One contract in particular has become the focal point for the Firestorm despite its low production numbers, the CH-11NG Gunsmith, manufactured by Jalistar Aerospace for exclusive use by the AFFS. Coming in at a price of 15 million C-bills for the 25-ton Raider, 2 entire lances of commandos could be fielded for the same expense. This armor-blistering price tag comes thanks to cutting-edge X-Pulse lasers, integral mask patterned for the hybrid leg actuator layout, along with a custom-run extra light engine, reflective armor, and endosteel chassis, all designed and manufactured by Jalistar as part of a multi-decade development and manufacturing contract. Supporters say that the gunsmith's record has been exemplary, with extensive deployments on Brooklyn, Robinson, and Tegeta, all showing a high lethality in direct combat along with above-average survivability during raiding operations. This has not deterred critics who say that effectiveness should be expected from such an expensive battle mech, and that the focus on individual performance plus the full-head ejection system points to the mech being used as, quote, another expensive toy for royalty-playing soldier. Now on to more of Your Sphere Today.
And that brings us to an end of another deployment of BungleTech. Again, thank you for your patience if this was not your cup of tea. And as a quick reminder, throw a comment or email our way letting us know how you apply your worldview, secular or otherwise, at the table. Also, before we go to some words of wisdom from one of our patrons, I just want to let you know that we've just released version 1.3 of our game mode collection. Changes include replacing the custom turret rules with BSPs and adding 2 new game modes, Mad Stampede and Mechanized Holy War, the latter of which was inspired, conceptually at least, by our episode today. Check it out under our links. And now to some words of wisdom.
MechWarriors live and die by their dice. Always designate distinctive pairs so you can keep up with the action, and be sure to announce what you're rolling first.
Well said, Technician Matthew Hopper. Well said. As always, you can find us via Discord, email, and Patreon, all linked in the show description. Until next time, MechWarriors. Good fortunes on the battlefield. Selah.
All podcast objectives complete. Podcast shutdown sequence initiated.